So again, hello everyone. My name is Paula Hoppinen. I'm the Senior Director uh, of of Engagement with Impact ON, and I'd like to welcome you to the third session of Impact Week, which is Cooperatives as Social Enterprises. Um, Before we go forward in our program, I just want to say that I'm joining you from Thunder Bay, which is on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe of the Fort William First Nations, and they are signatories to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. Impact ON does have offices around the province, and of course, you're joining us from around the province as well. So we'd like to acknowledge all the contributions and the continuing contributions of the First Nations, Inuit and Métis people, and we're very honored and privileged to be able to work and play and live on these lands. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce to you our moderator for today. Her name is Michelle Christmann, and she's the education manager with Ontario Cooperative Association. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to her and stop sharing my screen.
You, excuse me. Thank you so much, Paula. It's wonderful to be here today. Today we're going to talk about cooperatives as social enterprises. Oh, sorry, forgive me. Our presenters today, myself, I am Michelle Christmann. As Paula mentioned, I'll just be moderating today's session. I'm the education manager at the Ontario Cooperative Association. The Ontario Cooperative Association is a not-for-profit cooperative. We represent cooperative businesses around Ontario. And our mission is to educate, to advocate, and to connect cooperatives across the province with each other. Our guest today, I'm so pleased to have us join today, Danielle Turpin, who's the founding member of the Home Care Workers Cooperative and the Cooperative Care Alliance, and Emily Power, president of Caroline Co-op. Very briefly, our agenda today, after my welcome, we'll hear from Danielle and hear her story, and then we'll hear from Emily, and then we'll have time for audience Q&A. So if you have questions, as we go throughout the session, please feel free to enter them in the chat, and we will address them during the Q&A portion of the webinar. And we welcome all comments as well in the chat. So today we'll be exploring cooperatives as social enterprise ventures. So we're really excited to be here today, and thank you to Impact ON for having us join Impact Week 2024. We're excited to be here to have the opportunity to shine a light on cooperatives and their role in the social enterprise landscape. The modern co-op, as we know it, has been around for almost 200 years. And today you'll find over 3 million co-ops in every single sector and size operating around the world. So co-ops look like many different things. They are a dynamic and versatile business model. Co-ops are trusted names you may recognize, like Desjardins, Ocean Spray, Gailey Foods, even the Green Bay Packers. Co-ops are also smaller, community-centered enterprises, filling gaps in services, meeting needs within their communities, and building systems of solidarity and support, while giving a voice to those who strive for equity, autonomy, and agency for the way they live and work. Our guests today represent the possibility for real sustainable change. Two sectors right now that are desperate for solutions: home care and housing. If you don't know a whole lot about cooperatives, that's okay. This is a great place to start your journey, because co-ops always start with a story about people, about empowerment, about coming together to create transformative solutions that affect real change. The stories you'll hear today from Danielle and Emily will show you how communities were able to come together and use the cooperative business model to make the changes they wanted to see in their lives, to overcome the challenges faced by both themselves and their communities. The same challenges that millions of other Canadians just like them are facing right now in their own lives. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Danielle Turpin, again, founding member of Home Care Workers Cooperative and the Cooperative Care Alliance. So I will stop sharing my screen. I will hand it over to Danielle.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much. And thank you for inviting me here. I'm excited to tell you my story and a little bit about the home care co-op. I'm just going to see if I can share my screen as well. If okay. Is everyone able to see that okay? Perfect. Okay. So ultimately, what Michelle was saying is really kind of what happened to me. We're talking about little stories and our journeys and how we got here. And I can be honest, I was one of the few people who, even though I understood the co-op concept, I didn't really know in practice what a co-op really looked like. I just knew the underlying terms of democratic, member owners. You can be part of something and get maybe some shares back, things like that. But to really fully understand what it meant as a worker and as a care receiver for our clients, I didn't know. So this was a new process for me as well. Um, I am just one sec here, got to make sure I can, there we go. So I'll start off with saying that I'm Danielle Turpin. I am the founder and executive director of Home Care Workers Cooperative, and we service the Peterborough area of Ontario. I'm also the executive director and co-founder of the Cooperative Care Alliance. The Cooperative Care Alliance we introduced the Cooperative Care Alliance. It was developed so we can actually establish other local nonprofit cooperatives in different communities. So to date, we have one other co-op, Home Care Workers Cooperative York Simcoe, that is fully incorporated and up and running. And we have several other ones that are in Ontario, little seedlings, we call them, in the GTA and North Bay area, Durham region as well. As a PSW, and I've been a PSW for close to 17 years now, if not longer, ultimately, I got into this because of my grandmother and wanting to be as her care provider and her primary care provider. And I really wanted to offer people in their later stages of life the support and dignity that they deserve, right? And I just felt that that's a really honorable and valuable way to give back to community and to care and build these relationships. I've worked in long-term care, I've worked in home care, worked in retirement. And my last job in the public sector, per se, prior to me working, creating this co-op, was in a nonprofit, community-based long-term care home. I left each sector thinking that I would move to another sector because it would be a better fit. And each sector, there was always some sort of problems that I couldn't reconcile as a worker. Some of these issues kind of followed me to each different sector. But one of the main issues and the underlying issues that really got me thinking about a way out was the lack of resources PSWs have when it comes to caring for their clients in the way that we kind of always felt we should, right? In the way that seniors feel that they should be cared for. I kind of call this a bit of a moral injury to care workers because we're not in a position, our hands are tied because we don't have the resources that we need, such as time, such as better working conditions, such as more staffing and support. So we were really put in a position of having to cut corners a lot, do the best we can with what we have. And even though I'm a worker advocate, I was involved in unions and on the executive union, I really felt that there was no way to really change this system while I was inside of it. So I decided to kind of start my own co-op. And in 2020, myself and two other founders created the Home Care Workers Cooperative. I think basically this really was based on the reality of the situation during COVID, but a lot of things haven't changed. And PSWs and care sector workers have been screaming for a very long time, as well as seniors, about the lack of support that's happening in this, in the current system. So I'll just kind of highlight a few of the facts here, just kind of get a better background of why this co-op home care movement is working and it's so needed. Home care is underfunded. I don't think that there's any data out there that would state differently. And although the Ontario government announced an investment of $1 billion in home care between 2022 and 2025, currently there's only a fraction of this has been reported to be paid out. I know as of last year, there was actually through the Home and Community Care Support Services, which is what it was last year, funding through these areas were actually returned back to the government. It was just unspent money in home care. And I have a hard time wrapping my head around that, especially in such a dire need that we've been in these last few years. We're finding too that it's not the same. This is provincial. This should be the same for everybody. This is the ideal in Canada, that healthcare is the same and it's equitable to everybody. And what we're seeing is that's not necessarily the case when it comes to home care. Many of the coordinators that kind of make those decisions in regards to who receives it, how much they receive, what type of support they receive, they're either underqualified, they don't have any specific training to be in this position, and the standards of their knowledge of the home care programming is vastly different all across the board. So I have some clients in one area who are receiving a certain amount of funding or a rate of funding. And then I have others in a different area that are being told that they're not even eligible for something. So it's very disconcerting to the clients to have to navigate this. One of the things, and I'm sure we've all heard this, that clients, care receivers are really struggling with having the random strangers coming into their homes. So what happens when you get publicly funded home care through the current system right now, somebody's going to come in and they're going to do an assessment and base that on your current needs. Which makes sense. And then there's a kind of a bid or a call for that contract to go out to the different eligible home care companies. So these home care companies will pick up these clients, whether they have capacity or not, unfortunately, and pick up these clients. And then it's really up to them and how they distribute that type of care and what type of care is offered. So a lot of times what we're finding is that PSWs are going into these homes not really knowing what the care plan is, or they're going into the homes, never meeting the clients before. They have to leave early, or they can't, they don't even show up. These are a lot of the biggest concerns that some of the clients are having. And remonitoring the reliability and that quality of the home care is also very difficult because there's no general oversight for home care like there is in long-term care. So what happens is, for example, PSWs have there's no title protection. There's no real legislation on what our scope is at this point. So it's a bit concerning. And so employers can hire anybody really to do this job right now. And ultimately what's happening is that we have about 40 different names for what a PSW is. So for the job that I do in Ontario, there's at least, probably around 40 different names. And PSWs can be hired and trained in high school. They can be trained in community college. They can be trained in private college. They can be trained right now through some of these for-profit home care agencies offering these 6 weeks, real cramped course to get them in as, say, a home care support worker. So we're not always getting what you ask for as a client, and PSWs aren't necessarily getting trained the same across the board. This can also be a concern for employers, but it's definitely a concern for PSWs and the care receivers. And of course, all of this is going to take a toll on the mental well-being of the senior and the adults. So the Senior Social Action of Ontario is reporting that these systemic issues with home care are leading to a decline in mental and physical health. And sadly, some of these folks are actually seeking medical assistance and dying, not necessarily because they need it, but because they feel that their choices are limited. And that is something we need to make really special note of, because it's very concerning that this is a route that people are choosing based on lack of options of care. We have, and I could say this is higher, but 42% of home care patients would have that primary family or friend caregiver who experienced distress and anger or depression in relation to their caregiving role. And they almost immediately are unable to continue their caregiving activities. We as a society, I think, are putting too much pressure and too much reliance on the family caregiver. We have people having to leave their jobs to care for loved ones. We have people who are doing work that they're unskilled to do. And they also have families and jobs and everything of their own. So this leads to not only a crisis in the client, but this leads to now a family crisis, which causes a whole other, problem. We have a lot of people who are receiving home care. So at least 900,000 people are receiving home care on a regular basis. And that's anywhere from children are being rehospitalized, could be 24-hour care. It's all across the gamut. The majority of them are receiving some sort of publicly funded system. A lot of them receive supplementary system on top of that publicly funded care. And the rest are receiving just private. With everything that is going on, and I think the one thing that we're hearing loud and clear is that seniors want to stay in their home. This is a very recent survey, and every bit of data that keeps on coming out about this, it's all saying the same thing. Seniors want to stay in their home. They don't want to be pushed to long-term care. They don't want to have to go to retirement homes. They're happy in the homes that they're in. So they're wanting support to stay in their homes. We had about 1.2 million Canadian adults needing home care in 2018, and that has gone up since then. But what we're finding that's also increased is that there's a large percentage of people who are feeling that their needs have been unmet. And that speaks volumes to the current system and maybe some of the changes that we need to address. And when we have a large majority of people, a large portion of people, who are saying that their needs are unmet, and then we realize that this is going to be counter to what we all agree is the benefits of home care, right? So we want people to stay in their homes safely. We want to reduce the costs that are associated with institutional options like home care hospital or long-term care. We want people to live in a community that they are comfortable in, as this improves that quality of life, and it does decrease mortality. So there's a bit of a disconnect with what we're hearing care receivers experiencing and what we all agree when it comes to why home care is so important. Some of the major barriers we talked about in getting the publicly funded home care, or even private, is the availability of the services. Are they going to meet the needs of the care receivers and those needing the care? Are you going to get the type of care that you want? Such as the personal characteristics. Are you able to build relationships with these PSWs? Do they really understand your needs? And the cost, a good majority of people who are receiving publicly funded care are stating that it's not enough, and they do pay for private care on top of that. And that can be costly, and cost shouldn't be a barrier for getting quality care. And what we're finding now too is that doctors, care coordinators, all of that aren't necessarily fully understanding the holistic needs of our elder population and what is needed in regards to keeping them in their home safely. And of course, the negative effects of the unmet home care needs are that overall, we notice that there's a poor health in our senior population. They use other home care services and other health services more. So we see more falls, more ambulances, more paramedics, more hospitalizations, and a lot of them are put into or kind of forced or pressured into going into long-term care homes prematurely because of their inability to navigate the home care system. So this is where we come to the co-op model. And why is it important to explore alternative models of home care? Well, I mean, I think a couple of things would be, we always want to provide choice to the public. I think choice is very important. We also want to make sure that there is, a model of care that is going to be a little bit more receptive to the care needs, that the two stakeholders really that are involved in the care sector are the care recipients and the care workers. So we want to put them in that driving force, have them have that say in the type of care that they're going to receive. And that works really well in the co-op model.
Good afternoon, Dale Holmes speaking.
The need for change. So one of the concerns that I'll just kind of summarize here is that the care provided to seniors right now and those with developmental challenges and even our children seems to be currently guided by a for-profit model rather than a quality of care motive. The Ontario Personal Support Workers, or the PSWs, are being treated as interchangeable labor units rather than individuals that provide care to people in need. And we see this a lot in the care sector. As PSWs are the largest demographic in the healthcare sector right now, and we have the smallest voice. And as a result of the poor work environment, many PSWs we're leaving the care sector just when we need to be here more. We need to be pushing and retaining care sector workers, and instead we're seeing the opposite. So in order to not only establish these small co-ops in local communities, we've been kind of called to action a little bit by other people across Canada and other local agencies to start developing co-ops in other communities. So in order to develop a real cooperative care sector, the Cooperative Care Alliance will be acting as a provider of care to kind of start things organically and as an as-needed basis in each community. And we'll then incubating those local care co-ops. So as an incubator, we're providing all of the business services required from the initial development to the ongoing support that local community co-ops need, such as payroll, invoicing, consulting, business modeling, everything that a care sector worker would need to develop one of these care co-ops. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to skip through here just so we can. So we started in 2020, and it was just myself and two other PSWs. And shortly after that, we started to grow, and then we did the Cooperative Care Alliance in order to kind of start working in a broader area of Ontario. So after the Cooperative Care Alliance was developed and incorporated, we were able to establish co-op seedlings in the North Bay area, which we're currently working with, in the Toronto and GTA area, and in Beaverton and the Durham area now actually as well. And we're working with some folks in Kingston. And ultimately, the Cooperative Care Alliance will help in an organic way, in a very supportive way, to help these PSWs and the seniors in the area develop their own community-based co-op. Each community-based co-op will also be local and autonomous. So even though they will have our name and our modeling, we're doing this to kind of support them with the business resources, but they will have full autonomy, as all co-ops must, to make the decisions that are based on the needs of its members as well as the community that they're in. Another thing that we've been able to do as a nonprofit social enterprise and a nonprofit co-op was we have been building and forging vital partnerships across Ontario. One of the big partnerships we have right now is Seniors for Social Action, which is a very large seniors advocacy group, and they are really supporting our model. We do a lot of guest speaking on their support. And they've been pushing and lobbying for the co-op model to be supported a little bit more at the government level as well. We have different partnerships on the local level as well, such as Age Friendly Peterborough and Dementia Solutions, just to kind of name a few. And I think, again, co-op's about collaboration and community, so it's really important that we continue to engage and forge these vital partnerships. One thing that's very different, I think, from our co-op model to the current system is that we invest in our members. That's one of the key components of a co-op. It's actually one of the 7 principles. So we invest in education and training and development to make sure that our PSWs are at the highest skill set that they can be based on the needs of our clients. And that's really key. We don't want money to be a barrier for them to improve their skill set. So we ensure that that's something that's offered to all of our PSW members and staff. We actually have, different and clients. We have different workshops that we send out even to our clients that might be of interest to them. So education's very key to us. So our goals and what's going on with us right now is, so my co-op itself has tripled in size. And that's to say that I am growing very slowly on purpose, because I want to make sure that we grow always with the vision in mind. And I make sure that we're always able to keep in mind that quality care and the PSW's work environment is the key motivator for us. So not profit, not numbers. And so we are continuing now the establishment of home care cooperatives in Ontario, as I mentioned. And we're working on building awareness of the co-op model. So right now we're holding events such as this, where we're also going into colleges and working with colleges and trying to speak with them about setting up some educational materials for the PSWs themselves, so they can understand a little bit more about another very feasible pathway, which would be a co-op instead of just long-term care, which seems to be the push. And we are working right now with creating, a good model in Ontario, so we can use that as, kind of a pilot to move across Canada. We have people in other provinces right now, specifically BC, Saskatchewan, and Nova Scotia, who are really eager to take this model on to their provinces. So again, we're doing this slowly so we can make sure we get it right, but that would be our end goal, is to make sure we have the ability to move this across Canada. I know that profit and nonprofit seems to be a big question, and sadly, it's caused a lot of controversy, especially when it comes to the home care model. But we chose to be a nonprofit co-op because, without a doubt, in my mind, in our vision, is that care and profit should not mix. And we need to make sure that the key motivators for caring for our most vulnerable people is about the quality of care and that their needs are being met. So what we're seeing here now, unfortunately, is the failure of both private and public sectors in Ontario to satisfy the home care needs. Is attributed to a shift from that nonprofit approach that we had before the 90s and in the 90s, where it'd be VON and Red Cross. And now what we're seeing is the majority of the key players and the key companies here are for-profit home care companies. So they have to have a goal of saving money. That's their job. They answer to the shareholders. And we always need to now ask ourselves, where do they save the money, right? Where does this happen? We have that competitive bidding process in home care. And it's bringing more and more for-profit providers into that space. But workers are finding that there is now an increasingly precarious, unregulated kind of workforce. And they're beginning to shoulder those expanded responsibilities in order to keep costs low. So they're asking to do more work with less guarantee. And what we're seeing, I'm surprised because every sector is saying that they are losing PSWs, that they're short-staffed. Yet, if one was to apply to a long-term care home, if one was to apply to retirement, we're going to see that there's no guaranteed work, or they're hiring only part-time, and you have to work your way up, and they're hiring agencies to come in as opposed to just real employees who are going to stay there and stay on a regular basis. It doesn't make any sense to me. So we need to kind of change that concept. So the use of our nonprofit cooperative model is empowering our PSWs by giving them better scheduling options. We make sure that the time that they are invested is going directly to the clients, as opposed to being on the road all the time. We have a 2-hour minimum for our client care. So that gives both the care receivers and the clients a lot of time to be able to get those tasks dealt with, plus build those meaningful relationships that are really important when it comes to receiving and giving quality care. They also get $25 an hour as PSW members to start, plus benefits, dental and health and paid sick days. So again, taking care of our workers is key to retention and quality care for our care recipients. This obviously means less burnout and less care fatigue for the PSWs, and this is going to, in turn, have the quality of service they give their clients, where workers are adequately compensated for what they do. And when PSWs speak, they're actually heard because they have a voice at the decision-making table, right? So they want to have a question or have an issue about their work environment. It actually is addressed because they are member owners. And this also gives them a voice that they can actually advocate for their clients as well. I'm not going to show you that. That's just kind of part of the thing. That was a testimonial from one of our clients. And sadly, she just passed away today. So I am going to talk about some very quickly, some impact on communities in regards to the cooperative care line or the cooperative movement, but I'm not going to speak too much to it because that's Michelle's area. But we have a lot of over 19,000 individuals were employed full-time by a cooperative. The thing that I find interesting is 14% of Ontario's cooperatives were in some sort of healthcare and social assistance industry. So this speaks volumes. This is already working. This is already something that people are doing very well at. 72% of the province's cooperative businesses are nonprofits and 28 are for-profits. $76 billion of combined assets. And what we have the ability to change is the average salary of a personal support worker right now is sad. It's around $20 an hour. By comparison, the CCA and the Home Care Workers Cooperative has a starting salary of a probational PSW at 22, plus 3 paid sick days, plus access to benefits and travel time. Our member PSWs have a starting salary of 25 an hour, plus. While the PSWs in a for-profit home care report low pay and difficulty providing quality care when they're forced, with these staffing shortages, with some even leaving the sector entirely due to dissatisfaction. We have a lot of people leaving the sector right now. PSWs and the nonprofit co-ops are reporting with the studies that are being done, they're feeling empowered and they're feeling heard, and they want to stay. This has led them to be a really good advocacy group and voice for their clients as well. So I mentioned briefly the Cooperative Care Alliance was developed to help support other local community-based co-ops. And really our mission is to build a community where care is synonymous with compassion and connection and dignity for all individuals. And at CCA, we're focused on empowering home care cooperatives to provide essential services to local communities. So our commitment is to ensure everyone has access to the quality care and support regardless of their circumstances. We're going to amplify caregivers' voices. We'll create a platform where caregivers can share their experiences, challenges, and successes, ensuring their voices are heard. And that's already been done through the Virtual Caregiver Network. We have professional development that's offered regular training and workshops to improve quality care provided given by the caregivers. And this is important that the Cooperative Care Alliance can ensure that every home care workers cooperative in Ontario and eventually across Canada has all of the same training, all of the same standards of scope. So anybody who sees home care workers cooperative knows that every home care workers cooperative is going to be at that high level of standard of care. Community building, we foster a strong sense of community and mutual support among our caregivers, and our caregivers are known to be very, very involved in the community. So we do a lot of volunteering in our community as well and stay engaged. We host events to celebrate and acknowledge the efforts of our dedicated caregivers. So we spend time working on different info sessions, team events, as well as yearly conferences, and of course our AGMs. So some of the challenges that we're finding right now are we have limited access to funding due to a lack of co-op awareness from different organizations, and even different cities and municipalities don't fully understand this business model enough. So we find that we're kind of being shut out from some of the opportunities that other businesses would be able to have access to funding for. We are an overworked, underpaid, and marginalized workforce, and we're mostly racialized women in this demographic. And we just don't have the resources to be able to look beyond immediate issues towards that large scale systemic change. And this is what I'm finding right now with PSWs, that they're a very fragmented group. The opportunities, we want to ensure that the growth and enhancement of home care services meeting evolving needs of the communities across Ontario. In order to do this, we need to build that robust model that can be replicated and scaled across other provinces. We're already doing this. We have a model that is replicated already and is easily replicated on a larger scale. And we just want to make sure that the availability of that high quality home care service will eventually become nationwide. One of the things that I do know that is important for this is to seek support for a home care cooperative development fund. This might be for people who know co-ops. This could be something similar to like the Arctic Co-op Fund that was given to them to kind of support and develop their service co-op. To other co-ops right now, there's a home care cooperative development fund that was just put forth not too long ago, or sorry, not home care, housing co-op development fund that was just created. So we're looking for something similar. The home care, and we have a fund, we've done fundraising, but we need to grow this to a bit more of a robust capacity. It aims to transform the home care landscape in Canada by initially establishing a pilot project in Ontario. We've done that. The goal is to launch 6 to 8 or 6 to 10 home care cooperatives across various regions of Ontario, including underserviced areas like Northern Ontario. We're currently working on these right now. And so, of course, the establishment and the growth of the development fund will help us do that. Once this model is proven successful, and I believe it already has been, it can be scaled across other provinces, and the fund will provide initial capital, co-op entrepreneurial training and marketing to build awareness of these co-op models. This community home care co-ops will ensure that that high quality of care is available to everyone in need. What we do in each community is we conduct a needs assessment. So we're going to identify the regions within Ontario with the highest need for the home care services and engage with those local communities so we can discuss what those needs are for that community. We're going to design and implement marketing campaigns to raise awareness of the home care co-op model within Ontario and supply an outreach worker for that area to work directly with those PSWs to support them in the growth of their own community. We're going to recruit co-op members, including caregivers, healthcare professionals, and community members to help develop that and make sure we have a good representation of the needs of the community on that board. We'll set up a well-equipped home care co-op facility across in Canada. So that's where everybody will have access to that training, have access to the supports that are needed, and develop sustainable revenue models, including networks of home care co-ops. What we need in order to continue this is to make sure that policies and government actually see the model, the co-op movement, as something very viable. Not that it has to replace any current model, but it should be simultaneously accessible. And we need support from the government on this. So we need policy changes to make sure that our co-ops have the same access to the government funding, that the co-op models have access to be able to become service contracted providers within the current system. And we also need to make sure that there's some more awareness and education about this. It is important to include cooperative models in the healthcare planning. Co-ops are known to fill in gaps that exist in current systems, and gaps exist everywhere. So if we can create and find a model that can help hone in on some of those service gaps, we can be ensured that we can, everybody will have access to that quality of care and people won't be missing out. So the co-op model is already making a difference in the lives of PSWs and their clients. We have lots of members. We have been a surplus model since the start, which in new businesses is kind of unheard of, actually. And we've been doing very well. It's already been replicated many times, and each business, when we're moving into that co-op and kind of developing them, becomes a little bit easier, and that transition becomes a little bit smoother. As awareness of the co-op model in the home care sector grows, there's potential to change the healthcare policy across the nation for the benefit of workers and clients alike. And again, it's about giving people that choice, allowing them to choose what type of care they're going to get. Is this going to be nonprofit, or are the people going to be able to, are the caregivers being well taken care of? These are questions that our taxpayers should have a right to ask and choose the type of quality of care that they get and who they support. So in conclusion, really the cooperative approach to home care is rapidly gaining traction. We've had people come out from, I've had the CBC News Marketplace interview us several times. Lots of different areas. We have the Senior Social Action of Ontario, who is supporting us and pushing on different policies. And I really think that with the support of the community, that this will actually gain a lot more traction. It provides solutions to many of the problems with the current for-profit model when it comes to lack of retention, providing care to the PSWs, making sure that they're well compensated in a good work environment. And most importantly, it provides a solution where seniors want to stay in their homes and have more of a say when it comes to the type of care that they receive. And as the older adult population expands, so does the need for that sustainable quality home care. And it goes back to choice. So we're asking everybody, how do you want to contribute your support to the growth and development of the home care cooperatives? Is there way, knowledge, anything like that, so we can kind of help support this co-op movement to get a larger area and grow across Ontario? I won't go on there, but this is really just about, this is another presentation, but this is really about some of what our PSW members say in regards to their work environment, and they're happy, so why they've chose to stay here. But I will speak and I just want to speak to one testimonial. I had a client who we've been with for a very, very long time, and sadly, she did pass away today, but this is her daughter. She says, when the need for home care arose, my parents tried the government-funded care, but found it lacking in many ways. We were so happy to find an alternative, Home Care Workers Cooperative. Our primary caregiver is co-founder Danielle. We couldn't ask for a more caring, talented, knowledgeable, and calm in a crisis person. I'm sure HCWC is leading the way for others to follow. And that's really just speaking to the types of relationships that we have the ability to build in this co-op model as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Danielle.
Oh, I'm sorry, I ran over time.
That's all right. Okay, perfect. So, thank you so much. I know your tireless dedication. I know you're working all hours of the day to transform the home care landscape into something that is so much more compassionate and sustainable. So we thank you for that. Now I'd like to introduce Emily Power, president of Caroline Co-op, a nonprofit rental housing co-op in Hamilton. She has experience as a tenant organizer, fighting evictions and rent increases. Emily holds a degree in urban planning from the University of Toronto and works as an affordable housing development manager. So welcome, Emily.
Thanks, Michelle. I've been asked to share a little bit about our journey as tenants in our apartment building in Hamilton over the last year in organizing in response to our landlord putting the building up for sale and pursuing our dream of fundraising to buy the building and convert it into a nonprofit housing co-op. So we did achieve our dream. In June of this year, we closed on the purchase. And actually, just this past weekend, we held our founding celebration. So you can go to the next slide, Michelle. So just to zoom out here, the gentrification of Hamilton has really accelerated in the last 5 years as we've been brought into the Greater Toronto Area commuter shed, and a lot of people have moved into the city, and along with them, various landlord investment companies. In the last 10 years, there's been a huge shift in the rental market as a result of the sale of apartment buildings from mom and pop landlords to financialized landlords. So real estate investment trusts and asset management companies like Starlight and Interrent, REIT, Hazelview, Mallium, Pulis are more local players, but they all take a much more aggressive approach in their property management style in order to turn over units and increase rents. And concurrent with this, there's been a rise in no-fault eviction filings. So these are cases of demolition, condominium conversion, landlord's own use, eviction applications to the Landlord and Tenant Board. They've more than doubled in the last decade. And as a result of all of this activity, close to 16,000 affordable rental units have been lost. And the city of Hamilton and social housing providers in the city are not keeping pace. For every one affordable unit constructed, 23 units were lost to market pressures. And this is certainly not unique to Hamilton. Across Canada, over the same time period, 550,000 units at the $750 a month and below were lost to market pressures. Over 6,000 people are now on the city's affordable housing waiting list, and 1,600 people are living rough in shelters and encampments. So this is just to say that our fears as tenants, when we learned a landlord had listed our building for sale, this is very commonplace in Hamilton, and I'm sure in many other cities in Ontario. We know how this generally plays out when an investment company purchases a building at these escalated prices. The sitting rents cannot support those mortgage payments. And, these investment companies are motivated to make profit for their shareholders. And so they undertake these very aggressive campaigns to push out longstanding tenants through cash for keys offers or other types of harassment. So you can go to the next slide, Michelle. And so we organized our tenant association early 2023 when we heard the landlord had listed the building for sale. Initially just to learn our rights as tenants and support each other in fighting back against these eviction pressures. But in consultation with our local co-op federation, we decided we would go for it and we would try to fundraise to purchase the building ourselves and convert it into a nonprofit rental co-op. You can go to the next slide. And this was a long process. We had to work together. We had to incorporate. We had to develop our bylaws. We had to, in the same way that, a business would sign a memorandum of understanding in order to convert the business into a workers' cooperative. We had to develop similar, basis of unity and a collective understanding for what our goals were and how we were going to do this. And to my knowledge, there are very few examples of this in Canada. And so we didn't have many resources to draw upon. So we had to come up with all of this ourselves. But we knew at the end of the day, if we could fundraise the money needed for the down payment, we could qualify for a mortgage, which we could pay off over time through our housing charges. And like I said, we closed on the purchase in June. We've elected our board of directors and established our committees to collectively manage our finances and the maintenance of the building. Here's a nice photo just from this past weekend of ribbon cutting outside the building and our new sign. You can go to the next slide, Michelle. So why did the co-op model appeal to us? Number one, guaranteed security of tenure and affordable homes under this nonprofit model, but also, the fact that we had a responsibility to manage the building ourselves through a collective and democratic process that we could, maintain, keep our community intact, but also welcome new people in need of affordable housing, referred from the city's affordable housing waiting list as units turnover, and that we weren't in this alone. We had the support of our local federation, the Golden Horseshoe Cooperative Housing Federation, as well as the Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada. Next slide, please. There's some confusion about equity housing co-ops and nonprofit rental co-ops. Equity co-ops function more like a condominium where you can purchase a share and it increases in value over time and can be sold at a profit. That's not the model that we pursued. We believe strongly in the nonprofit housing model, but also practically speaking, we would only be eligible for government funding under various affordable housing programs if we are a nonprofit rental co-op. Next slide, please. There's a precedent for this. There's many in Hamilton and across the country. Next slide. And we had many supporters in our journey. And this was probably the first time that all of these people had pulled together on a project, but I think they work very well together. And many have said to me they would be happy to work on another project like this in the future. So we believe that this model can be replicated and scaled up. Next slide, please. So these are some of the key lessons from our experience, but I think the main thing I would highlight is that it's important for tenants to be organized in general. There should be a tenant association in every apartment building, and you'll be better positioned to fight for repairs and against illegal rent increases. You'll have a stronger community. But if your landlord does choose to sell the building, you'll be able to act more quickly. You'll be much better positioned to try to purchase it yourselves for co-op conversion. Next slide, please. And finally, I would just like to highlight the CMHC program that was announced in this year's federal budget, the 1.5 billion for the Canada Rental Protection Fund, modeled after BC's Rental Protection Fund. This is very exciting. If it does survive the election, it will hold the potential for these apartment to co-op conversions to be replicated across the country. I think the expectation is that most of this money would probably go to established nonprofit housing providers who are still landlords. But I think there's a case to be made for co-ops and for tenant-led co-op conversion. And so it would be very exciting to see this fund actually launch. We had many challenges fundraising our down payment, and it was sourced from many different organizations. If there was a large-scale federally funded grant assistance program for down payments and acquisition related costs, that would change the game for nonprofits and co-ops looking to pursue these conversion projects and large-scale preservation of existing affordable rental stock. I think I'll leave it there. Hopefully we have a couple of minutes for questions.
Sorry, I'm stuck here. Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you. This is why I love the work that I do, because hearing stories of like this, where you're just like regular people who have kind of taken your power back and found this solution. So there's so many struggles and people feel so helpless and so powerless, I think, to do anything about this. And an example like this just shows us how, there's alternatives out there, and with some determination and some collective organization, really anything is possible. So I just find this story incredible. Thank you so much. So we'll just check in. I know we're just about out of time. We have a minute left. There was so much amazing information to share. I don't know, Paula, do we have a minute for questions?
I did ask through chat, I asked the audience if they would be willing to stay. So some are willing to stay for another 10 minutes or so to go through a little bit of Q&A, and then a little bit of information about what's still coming up. So I suggest we carry on at least for a few more minutes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so should we maybe go maybe to the chat and address a couple of the questions?
Absolutely. So the first question that we have is from Moaz Tashabehi, and it was it was during the presentation by Danielle. So the question was, how are we able to deal with times when there isn't enough work? That's the biggest challenge we face, because members are unable to commit in that case.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's a question for most home care companies, and why we kind of have this precariousness in this field. What we do at HCWC is, because the co-op are member owners, we're able to kind of establish a way where they can contribute to the co-op in other ways. So, for example, if we've had, they have a gap in their hours week, they can go out and do some outreach, or they can go out and do some administrative work. So there's always some sense of guaranteed work that we want to make sure that the PSWs have in order to kind of maintain that stability. And I think a lot of co-ops are able to do those little pivots when it comes to different markets. So I think co-ops actually do that very, very well to take care of their members.
Okay. And then the next question again from Wasb, and this one's directed at Emily. How were you able to maintain lower rent while meeting the high monthly mortgage payments? And also, why would a corporation choose to support a down payment on a project like this? What is their incentive?
We tried our best to negotiate the price down in the purchase negotiation with the landlord. But ultimately, and we did by a few $100,000. But we are receiving housing charge supplements through the city of Hamilton, so we're able to further subsidize housing charges for about half of the households who meet the low income threshold. And we didn't have any for-profit corporations investing in our building. We worked primarily with New Market Funds, which is an impact investor. They manage investments on behalf of community foundations and family foundations across the country, as well as received a forgivable loan under a CMHC Innovation Fund. And then the mortgage was through a local credit union under a CMHC insured mortgage, which provides a longer amortization and preferred interest rate in exchange for a long-term commitment to affordability.
Thanks, Emily. Now we have a question again for Danielle. What is the difference between HCWC and CCA? They seem to provide similar services.
Yes, yeah. So HCWC is the local community-based co-op. And that was the first, it was mine, that was the first pilot project that was created. And when we started getting the feedback from other communities saying that they would like to develop their own, we created the Cooperative Care Alliance to help other local communities and other communities develop their co-op. But in order to do that in a sustainable way, as opposed to plopping down a business in each of these areas, we're doing this organically in a supportive way that helps PSWs become entrepreneurs organically. So a PSW can come to us and to CCA and say, we'd like to kind of start looking at the co-op model. We will then allow them to work with clients just as a PSW through us, and then we will help support them by building that community market so they can gradually move into starting their own co-op. So it's a nice supportive gradual process. So they're not having to leave work or employment and all of a sudden moving into becoming a business owner. So the Cooperative Care Alliance supports all of the HCWCs. HCWCs are the local co-ops in each community, and they are owners of the Cooperative Care Alliance, which is a multi-stakeholder co-op. And the multi-stakeholder co-op Cooperative Care Alliance helps oversee the quality of care in each of the co-ops and helps oversee that back office support and marketing and development of each of the co-ops as well.
Right. So quality control and support, like scaffolding around the actual work.
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One final question that we have, and again, it goes to Emily, so it's a nice balance, a couple questions each. It's a question about, I guess, the assets used to retain the mortgage. So what was used as collateral to get the, with support, for, of course, from all the new venture funds and CHMs and so on.
Sorry, I'm not really sure if I understand the question. Like the building itself was the collateral on the loan.
Yeah, I think that's the question. So that, but was there anything else required?
Well, I mean, equity in the deal, right? So we couldn't have like a group, an impact investor like New Market Funds that's still a loan, right? So trying to stack together as many grants as possible, or, government funders love to structure things as forgivable loans when in essence it is a contribution, it is a grant. So making sure you have your team of lawyers who can argue that convincingly. Anyway, it shouldn't be this complicated. It shouldn't be this confusing. If that federal program were to launch, with true grant assistance, that would make everything so much easier.
Sounds like a job for the red tape reduction organizing. No, I'm just kidding. But no, absolutely. And I would say for co-ops in general, the obstacles or barriers to establishing are considerable. Could use a little bit of work in general. Um, so thank you so much to Emily and Danielle, and also to Michelle and OCA for putting all of this together. I'm incredibly grateful for your time and your contribution. It's thanks to time dedicated by organizations like this that make recognition weeks like Impact Week possible. So I'm very grateful. I'd also like to, I have to, and I'd like to mention the sponsors for our celebratory year. Impact ON is a social enterprise that's been around since 1964, and our job is to help create a better Ontario through the social economy. So we do this, we support the startup and scale up of social or like positive impact businesses such as non-for-profit social enterprise, for-profit cooperatives, but mission-based cooperatives, and so on and so forth. And so for this year, in order to put on some of these activities, we've had the sponsorship of Desjardins, the cooperators, and l'Assemblée de la Francophonie de l'Ontario, and also Heritage Canada. So we'd like to thank them for their support. And just a final thing, for those of you who are still in the room with us, we have about 13 of you. I'd just like to mention that there are still more activities happening this week for Impact Week. So, for example, this evening, if you are a French speaker or would like to practice your French, we have a roundtable being put on by l'Université de l'Ontario Français, which is about the history of co-ops in the 20th century. There are a couple of researchers that have done some preliminary work about the boom and the bust and the echo effect. So what periods over the last 100 years or so have had some a surge in the co-op movement, and then what were the conditions that made it so. So if you're interested, I would highly recommend. If you're in Toronto, you can attend in person at the l'Université d'Ontario Français on Lower Jarvis, or you can take part via Zoom. Also, tomorrow we have ONN, so the Ontario Nonprofit Network, presenting their State of the Sector survey, but also, in addition to that, how you can use that data to advocate for the nonprofit and for, I would argue, the social economy sector. So if you're interested in tapping into some of that data and also some of that know-how, I highly recommend that you sign up for that as well. And then on Thursday, we have a presentation by the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub about their state of women entrepreneurship in 2024, but also from a social enterprise perspective. And that'll be done in French as well. But again, there might be we're still working on getting some transcription in French. And surprisingly, when it works, the Zoom AI translator is quite accurate. So scarily so sometimes. So I highly recommend that. And finally, the last thing that I hope that everybody in attendance, both presenters and participants, will take part in is the unconference on Friday. And an unconference basically is where the participants propose topics to discuss about, and then we break off into groups and talk about it. So it's a great forum if you have a question or a problem that you want resolved, or if you have a project where you're looking for partners for, or even just a sounding board. I just highly recommend that you apply. So all of that information is on our website, impacton.com. And hopefully we'll see you at some of the other events this week. But thank you again to all of our presenters.
And I'll mention that I did put links to websites for Caroline Cooperative and Home Care Workers Co-op, and you could reach out to them with more questions. I thought, Emily, that Caroline Co-op was working on some more documentation around your kind of journey that may be made available to people. And Danielle, people can reach you through the website, your website as well, right? If you have more questions.
Mhm.
So
And we can also, Joy, just to make sure that everybody gets that information. So we'll be sending out a short survey tomorrow about your impressions of this, and we'll also be able to send out data or those contact details. And at the end of the day, when the video becomes available for replay. So
okay, perfect, wonderful.
thanks
Okay.
again. Have a
Thanks,
great day,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.